Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Give My Head podcast. I'm Tim McGarry, joined by my comedy colleagues as usual.
Michael McDowell and Damon Quinn.
A couple of housekeeping things to tell you about. First of all, Give My Head Piece. There is a Christmas special coming, but also, ladies and gentlemen, tickets are on sale for Give My Head Piece live next year. We are all over the province, the 6 counties, and probably a couple of down south. We're doing a couple of down south. From March of 2026. So tickets are available for the Grand Opera House. We're there the last week.
We're doing our bit for United Ireland.
Told you not to do that in front of David Jeffrey. I don't want to do it. Also, we are doing a live podcast on the 12th of October in the Mandela Hall at Queen's University. Get your tickets now. Links below for the tickets for the Give My Head podcast live. And we are delighted, ladies and gentlemen, to have a man in the studio who I'm a big... This is a terrible thing to say for a Cliftonville fan, but I'm a big admirer of yours. It's Mr. David Jeffrey, ladies and gentlemen. Football legend, managerial legend, player, manager of Linfield. Are you the second most successful manager ever in local football after a certain Roy Coyle?
I think so, or I've been told so, but no one could ever beat the boss man. Roy Coyle is the king of kings. An incredible record, whether it was at Linfield, Glentoran, time at Ards, down at Derry City, even Uri City as well. So the man was an absolute genius. Is an absolute genius.
He's a gentleman too.
Yeah, Damon.
Well, listen. First of all, David, thank you very much for joining us. Welcome. You're an Ards man, are you? We're here in Hollywood, but you said your family had a connection with Ned's Bar down there.
First of all, I'm going to say thank you very much indeed for inviting me and be such illustrious company. First and foremost. Number two, my family are all Hollywood people.
Right.
The Jeffrey family are from Spencer Street. On my father's side, mother's side, they're up in the Hollywood Hills. They were the Spears family. We actually grew up in Dundonald.
Right.
Hence I was born in Newton Ards, but all of the roots are very much in Hollywood.
Right, okay. So this
is the real pronunciation not Hollywood?
It should be Hollywood. My father was a grammar pedant.
Yes.
My father said it should be Hollywood. It's Hollywood's Los Angeles and films and stuff.
There are those who would certainly say that, time and time again. But listen, I just prefer good old Hollywood, actually.
Right. Okay. So the famous people out of Hollywood are Rory McIlroy and David Jeffrey. Then the most famous people.
Absolutely not. The famous people are Rory McIlroy, without any shadow of a doubt, and that's where it begins and ends. I'm quite sure there are lots of other people, but when it comes to sport, Rory McIlroy's way ahead.
I know, you're a legend as well. You're a legend in the local game. What I like about you is that I'm a big Cliftonville fan, as you know. I remember you being Linfield manager for many years and beating us on several occasions, which is very upsetting. And you took some abuse from our fans, would that be fair to say? But despite that, it's not the Cliftonville fans who give you most abuse. It's Glentoran fans probably hate you more than anybody else.
That would be probably fair over the piece. I've got to say, I enjoyed, I think it was 2 Christmases ago, when I went to a Cliftonville lunch.
You did indeed, yes.
And thoroughly enjoyed myself, and I was given the warmest of warmest welcomes, as I would have said back in the day when I was managing or playing. And Glentoran, likewise. Ironically, I've got to have a big thank you, and I've said this and written about it publicly, that Glentoran basically saved my footballing career.
Right.
As a young boy, I was across at Manchester United as an apprentice. I had a 3-year professional contract. When it came to the end, Ron Atkinson gave me those immortal words, "You're not good enough, son."
Wow. Is it as brutal as that?
Oh, golly days, yes. Yeah. Absolutely, Tim. It was.
That was late, was it 79 to 82 or something?
79 to 82.
So you're what age?
I'm 62. So I mean, I'll buy. But listen, I'm in the company of youth. But I remember, as I say, being told quite brutally, there was a game. Liverpool were playing Glentoran, or Glentoran were playing Liverpool, Liverpool in a friendly game. Ronnie McFall was the then manager. And myself and a dear friend of mine, Kel McDermott, were asked if we would come home. He was at Manchester United as well. If we'd come home and guest for Glentoran. And I remember on the morning of the game, my mum and dad passed away at the beginning of the year, but the family home where mum is at, up the church road. I remember on the morning of the game saying to mum, "See if I don't do well tonight, I'm rapping it. I'm absolutely rapping it. And she says, listen, trust in God and you will be fine. And I went down that night, and if I kicked it, God guided it. You know, it was one of those nights when I played, you know, particularly well. Liverpool had a full side out. In fact, there's a picture of myself with a Glentoran jersey on in the Glentoran boardroom, which I'm sure will turn most people of that persuasion. But ironically, it was Glentoran who, as I say, saved my footballing, my playing career, and then the rest, as I say, is history.
What position did you play?
I was a centre back.
Right.
I wouldn't say I was one of those, like, what do they call them now, Tim Ballers, you know, these get down and pass and play.
All right.
I was sort of more
stopping play, were you?
Yes, my strengths were heading. Well, I would say now, whenever I was managing, say, the centre backs, listen, you head it, you kick it, you tackle it, and that's it. You know, and if it's moving, you head and kick it and tackle it again. You know, so that was my raison d'etre. Was
the Cliftonville Linfield rivalry. I know nothing about football, by the way. But I just happened to be sitting beside a footballer at the Spur of Northern Ireland Awards for Friday night, sitting having dinner with him.
Stevie Garrett.
Stevie Garrett.
Yes.
He played for Linfield and Cliftonville. Yep. He went from Linfield to Newry and then to Cliftonville. And
was a Cliftonville legend for
10 years.
quite some time. Yeah. You know, he did fantastically well. There's for me, football. You know, yes, you have the communities from which clubs, you know, come from. But football has done so much to bring us through, you know, the darkest days. That's why I would be such a massive supporter of Irish League football. Yes, we have our rivalries. Yes, we don't always get on. Yes, we have different perspectives on different issues. Here's the common ground. Common ground is we love watching a game of football. We love, and that brings people together. It also brings those folk who maybe, you know, are there to, you know, engage in things which aren't overly wholesome, but the vast majority of people, you know, who just love the game of football, that's the bond. Football is the bond. And Stephen Garrett, you know, is an example. I could tell you, you know, a clatter of Catholic lads who came and played, you know, for Linfield during my tenure, you know, to the point, you know, where it just wasn't an issue for anybody. The only issue, what I used to say to players, listen, I don't care where you come from, I don't care what church you go to, I'm not really interested in your politics, to tell you the truth. Are you good enough to play for Linfield Football Club? Do you want to play for Linfield Football Club? And do you want to be a winner? And that's it, end of story. And it was as simple and as basic as that. And that, you know, I could tell you story after story after story. But it would actually get boring because it just sounds as if, oh, you're saying things to prove a point. Listen, wasn't an issue, and as I say, the traffic goes both ways.
Yeah. See the Manchester United. You're a youth at Manchester United. What are you, 16, 17, 18? What are you? You're there for 3 years. Do you think you're seeing major stars? You think I could? Can you see it, touch it, feel it, and then it's taken away from you?
Tim,
it
was
do
my
something to your head.
Dream from what I was 10, 11 years of age. I said we grew up in Dundonald. Beside us was Mr. McDole's field, and we would have had you know games of football. We had a wee team, Grandshot, all made up now. Grandshot Terriers against Wanstead Rovers. You know the pitch changed daily depending on where the cows were. You know, and that's the long and short. But if people wouldn't come out and play with me, I went out and played on my own. Such as my love of football. I was the goalkeeper, centre back, centre forward. Fast forward to the story, 14 years of age, the great Bob Bishop, the incredible scout who...
from Manchester United.
Yes, he found George Best, Sammy McIlroy, Jimmy Nicholl, you know, Chris McGrath, you know, Tommy Jackson. I could go on to him blue in the face. Wonderful, wonderful man. He came across myself. And from 14, I was signed as a schoolboy. In my last year at school, I attended Sullivan here in Hollywood. I went across every other weekend to play for the Manchester United youth team. I then was an apprentice on leaving school. Then when I turned 17, signed a 3-year pro contract. And yes, you know, I got as far as the reserves, no further. Right. But the dream was, could you get there? You know, could you get onto the Old Trafford pitch? We did so as youth team players in the Youth Cup. But unfortunately, the harsh reality was, Tim, that Mr. Sexton, who was the manager when I joined, left. Mr. Atkinson came, and you know, the only opinion that matters in football is the opinion of the manager.
And was he wrong? Were you good enough? Do you think?
No,
that
last year, Tim, I didn't. The first 2 years, I was on a real trajectory. You know, I'd played for the Northern Ireland under 18 side and was doing particularly well. Had played for the Northern Ireland or for the Manchester United youth team and was doing well. Was on the verge of the reserves. Got some reserve team games, and that was great for the first 2 years of my contract. The third year of my contract, I seemed to get stuck, so to speak, and wasn't able to sort of to move on. I'm not exactly sure. When I look back and reflect on it, I'm not altogether sure why. But certainly, looking back now with my managerial head on, if I had been there at the time and looked at David Jeffrey as he was in the third year of his contract, I would have more than likely said, "Sorry, you're not good enough." I might have said it in a different way. I might have been a bit more gentle, you know. Although it was a lesson well learned, and any time that I'm doing any talks for young people or for children, I always tell them, don't let anybody tell you you're not good enough. You may not be good enough to play at a particular level or to act at a particular level or to whatever it is, but don't dare let anybody tell you you're not good enough.
Our line of business as well, and we've a lot of actors we interview and stuff, but rejection is a big part of acting and but rejection, it's quite hard when you're 16, 17 to be told, listen, sorry mate, you're not going to get your dream. We're not.
I was 19, and when the message was delivered,
did it make you stronger being rejected?
Well, for me it did. You know, when I come home and say played that game for Glentoran, my confidence was desperately fragile. You know, the rejection was quite significant in my own head
and brutal.
And and yet, you know, going out and playing that one game was quickly followed up. The great man we've talked about, Roy Coyle, was manager of Linfield. He invited me to go away on a tournament out to Holland, and we played against some big named players and big name sides, and I did particularly well. And on the back of that, then he offered me a contract, and the decision was, do I go to Linfield or do I go to Glentoran? And Linfield was a choice, you know, and ultimately it was that was where it was felt it was best. My father, God rest him, was very much the influence and the decider of all things, and that turned out to be where I went. And then my life sort of it was strange because, you know, I've been a full-time footballer.
Yeah.
So what am I going to do now? Because back in the day we were part-time. Now our pre-season was, would you believe, Roy Coyle back in the day, pre-season was 4 nights a week, you know, and it was pretty brutal stuff, you know. But ordinarily we were 2 nights a week. I remember my first wage was £12 a week, £8 appearance, and £8 a win bonus. Yes, it's hardly going to sort of keep the, you know, the
wolf from the door.
From the door, exactly. Absolutely not. And I remember, you know, my dad sort of saying, you know, you better think about what you're going to do. And back in the day, if my memory serves correctly, you had to register in Corporation Street to be unemployed.
Yes, the Dole office in Corporation.
Yes,
Corporation Street.
So anyway, we went in and it was presented myself, and you remember, it says, well, you know, have you done an apprenticeship? I said, oh yes, I have. I was an apprentice footballer at Manchester United. Oh, right, okay, fine. And any profession? I was a professional footballer at Manchester United, full-time professional footballer. And I remember she was looking up, and, you know, she had glasses on, this lady, and said, well, I can assure you there are no full-time positions of a full-time footballer in Northern Ireland here. And I just thought, crikey, geez, right, that's me back down to earth. Ironically, my first proper job was writing dole checks as a casual CA.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in Corporation Street. Right. That was my, inverted commas, first proper job. But at that stage, when I came home, I'd written in the Linfield programme that I'd been involved in sort of Christian youth work over in Manchester, and that was an interest of mine. And that's when, while I was working away as a casual CA and had the football, I returned to, well, it's now the University of Ulster, but back in the day it was the Polytech, and I got myself enrolled on youth and community work training and trained professionally as a youth and community worker. And so the journey started. So
you were a social worker for a long time.
Yeah, well, that was the journey, Tim, because I then the work that I was involved in was probably at the more challenging edge of the scale in terms of working with children and young people and families and young men who maybe weren't involved in employment. And so I went back. I finished my youth and community work training in 1986. I then went back in 91 and completed my social work training there at Georgetown. And so my journey took me where I eventually then moved across to the Northern Trust. I worked with the team for physical disability, and then I became a senior social worker, and I headed up an integrated team who worked with older people and people with physical disabilities. And that was my...
Good on social workers. I have a family. I have a sister social worker, I have a brother-in-law social worker, two sisters social workers and a brother-in-law. And you don't get a lot of credit, social workers, but there's an awful lot of...
It is the most thankless task.
Yes, there's no award ceremonies for social workers.
No. Don't be shouting it too.
And the money's not great either.
Don't be shouting it, too loud. But the baseline for me was this was again another part of my journey. It was the path that God, had me on, was to work with people and to help people, encourage people, in its simplest terms. And its absolute simplest terms, and that's what I thoroughly enjoyed doing. And then I was playing, was involved in social work, and then when my playing days ended, I went into management, but I always had sort of two careers as such.
But that was like the 80s. You were playing for Linfield in the 80s, weren't you?
Yeah.
You played in the European Cup 85.
I
scored.
Yes,
against Shamrock Rovers. I know nothing about football.
Oh, did you do some research?
Usually he's done research.
I am absolutely so impressed. It was actually 84, and we were playing. No, I'll tell you this story because we were playing Shamrock Rovers, and we drew 0-0 at Windsor Park. George Gibson was sent off. Dermot Keeley, who had played at Glentoran and who ironically had played in that game against Liverpool, master craftsman when he came to the darker arts of the game. Right. George was sent off. How he was sent off, I'm not sure. Got a while long story short. We were then going down to Shamrock Rovers. They were by far an excellent team, managed by Jimmy McLaughlin, household names. No one gave us a pup's chance. We actually had to fly down. Such was the situation up here at the time. Yep. And I remember filling in my little pink boarding card, and name, David Jeffrey, occupation, student, purpose of visit, to beat Shamrock Rovers. And genuinely, that was all. And I have it to this day. Anyway, fast forward the story on the Linfield supporters were not allowed down, supposedly. Anyway, there was a quite a few who made their way down. And it was back in the day that the away goal rule that counted. So I can't remember the name of the centre back, but he'd give me a hefty old elbow to the side of the face, during up at our end. And I was sort of, in my head, I said, I'm going to make sure I can maybe return the compliment. And anyway, ball came out, coming towards me, and I saw the big fella coming out to try and block it. And I had every intention of trying to make contact with him. But here, holding below, didn't I make contact with the ball? And it went like an Exocet missile into the bottom right-hand corner, I think it was. And everyone said, what a strike, what a strike. And I went, yes, and yet again, it was another one where I hit it and God guided it. And I remember running the full length of the pitch down towards the Linfield supporters were missed by a Yale lock on the way down, let me tell you, no exaggeration, because I went back, picked it up and gave it to the referee who put it in his pocket, and that is not a waffle.
Wow.
But we won. It was heavy duty, let me tell you, Tim. It was a hefty Yale lock, that is not an exaggeration. And I remember giving it to the referee and he simply put it in his pocket, which was probably wise in the day. Yeah. Let's get on with the game. So that got us through to the next round, and we played Panathinaikos, and that in itself is another story. But quite right, 1984, I scored the goal which helped Linfield progress in the European Cup.
Glad. Whilst working as a social worker, studying.
I was at that stage. I was studying to be a youth and community worker. Right. So that's where I was at that stage in my career. So I was studying for that.
Championship, wasn't it? But the Hazel disaster happened later on, was it?
85.
85.
That was 85.
Yeah.
Because I remember being on placement and one night watching it on the television, and I couldn't work out exactly what was going on, and I think the one thing for me is, football is a game which brings us together. Is it that important? And when you think of the loss of life and all of that, it was horrible. Yeah. Absolutely horrible.
They had to make the decision to play the game after, wasn't it?
Yeah, they knew there'd been deaths, but they decided to play the game. So it'd be worse if they didn't play it.
You could talk about it all day, the fors and against, and the operational decisions that had to be made. Yeah. But I tell you one thing, football is not worth one life.
No. Can I ask you about religion? Because you're very open and you're a vert Christian. You're a member of the Orange Order as well.
Yeah.
Football is not necessarily a kind environment for that sort of thing, is it? Or is it? Or I mean, we have the great Johnny Addis playing for Cliftonville, who's openly Christian. Openly sounds terrible. Sorry, but you know what I mean? Sorry, he's a Christian, and his father Leslie is a minister and big supporter of Cliftonville. Lovely man. But is it tough being a Christian in dressing rooms where there are, the language sometimes fruity? Some of the discussions are fruity. Is it hard to?
I think that certainly maybe in years gone by when you were younger, and that might have been a difficult, but I'm 62. I'm unashamedly a man of faith, and that faith brings me into all sorts of places on both sides of the fence. And I go, people.
So it's massively important to you. I'm not religious, but it's massively important.
No,
to you.
It's prior to coming in to doing this podcast this morning. I made sure that I did my Bible readings. I made sure that I was as prepared as I could be because I wanted to do the best in this. I have a little saying: I want to be the best I can be because Jesus Christ died for me, and that is about giving of yourself, of service, and helping others. It's a very practical way of living, but very thankful. And there's I don't live by a book of rules, Tim.
Yeah.
I don't have all of these. I'm probably one of the worst examples of someone who, with regards to Christian living. But I have a very strong faith. My Lord Jesus Christ died for me on the cross. End of story. Black and white. And it's through Christ I have a relationship with my Father God in heaven. Now after that, I have one judge, and that is my Father in heaven. What have I been brought on this earth to do? As I say, is to help and to serve and encourage others. And I remember, for example, I've come here today. It's exactly the same when I went to Cliftonville on that particular day. I didn't go anything less than I'm a member of the Loyal Orders. I'm also a member of Ballykeel Conservative Flute Band, who are 125 years this year in Hollywood. If I told you the history of that small part band and the help that we have been given and the appreciation that we've had from our Catholic neighbours, you wouldn't get your head around it. That's maybe ostensibly all about Hollywood, but no, I'm absolutely unashamed about my faith. But I hate the term good living. Yeah. I hate the term as if it's it's very much a faith that I have in Christ and in God, and that is my guide and my influence. Whether it's been in football, youth and community work, social work, or whether in my daily living now, I'm forever having to improve and to get better. But as I say, I'm 62 now. I'm very nothing is going to put me off saying what I think or what I believe. And I hope that what I'm here to do is to be caring and loving and sensitive and supportive.
And have you always had your faith, or did it come later?
We were growing up. We grew up obviously very much in a Christian home, family home. Mum and dad. We went actually to Christ Church in Dundonald, and we went there to Sunday school as children. And attended church. Probably the tough time for me was when I went across to England, and where there maybe wouldn't have, where it was very much my own choice to go to things. Before that would have been family influence. If it was being fair, because Sunday, that's what you do. You went to church, went to Sunday school, or you went to Christian Endeavour. Manchester was where I had to stand on my own 2 feet. I had to make my own decisions, and that's when.
Sorry, you weren't entirely on your own then. No family or
Oh no, gee whiz, no. Now, parents will go across, clubs will buy them houses, they will do all sorts of things. I went across as a 16-year-old
on your own,
on my own,
in a wee boarding house or something?
In Diggs, and ironically, it was actually one night when I was waiting on the bus. And I started going to the local Methodist church, and the minister there, Ken Sowerby, just stopped and recognised me from getting in and out of church. We got chatting and yarning. And, eventually I left the digs and went to live with him and his wife Margaret, and they looked after me for my time there. Now, there'll be some people will say, oh, right, that was a lucky break. In my world and in my life, God doesn't do coincidences. I was looked after. But I had that simple faith, and it was my choice to go to church, and it was, I didn't have, Mummy and Daddy in there tell me, right, time to get up, time to go, time to get your
so it's your choice.
Suited and booted,
Right. Oh, cool. You did a lunch for Cliftonville, and you probably know as well. We have a minority of fans, and there were a few people. Why are you bringing that so and so to Cliftonville?
Yeah.
The vast majority of people were, you're a legend and all that, and you were very funny, by the way. Told some good jokes, I think you stood up and said you're delighted to be here as a member of the minority community. This is your opening gag. But there were a few people, there were always voices, and online and stuff. Oh, David Jeffrey's an Orange man, and the Orange Order has a certain reputation amongst in the Catholic community. They think, oh well, it's all full of bigots and stuff like that. Ironically, the previous podcast we had Dr. David Human, another Orange man, two Orange men in a row, and he said you did a thing for him in Schomburg House where you were doing a thing about famous Orange men and stuff like that. So you're a proud member of the Orange Order. Is that a religious thing? Is that a political thing, or is it cultural? What is it? It's mainly religious.
You see, if I was being really honest with you, part of it was a family thing. Yeah. The lodge that I belonged to, Ballykeel Defenders, LOL 417. That came out of family. The band came out of family, and it's just something that we did. Now, as time has gone on, then you work out why you're in what you're in, and there are things which. Like everything which you're very happy with, there's other things maybe you're not so happy with, and you've got to work those things out. But I know that the day that I went to Cliftonville, and yes, I could totally understand some people saying, well, why was David Jeffrey there? I hope that there'll always be things that people will not agree with each other with.
Yeah.
But there are core principles, core values, core ethics. I remember going to Corpus Christi and White Rock.
Yeah.
On Prize Day, sitting beside the local parish priest.
Yeah.
But why was I there? Billy Joe Burns, or as I called him, William Joseph Burns.
Well, yes.
William Joe was there. He was one of my players.
Yeah.
Why would I not go to his school?
Yeah.
Why would that be an issue? When we did the clean sweep back in 2005 and 2006, and we did an open bus tour, and then went up and down the Shankill Road. When you think of Paul McAreevy, when you think of Michael Galt, or Kearney, Ian O'Keehan, when I think of what's the issue here? The influence and the governor of my life is my Father God in heaven. It is not any organisation. Yeah. It's not anything else. That's where my faith is first and foremost in all things. And that's where I need to be true to it, not true to anything else, but true to my relationship with God and true to myself.
You had Orange Men in your family.
Oh yeah. My grandfather was a grandmaster. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And he was, but bizarrely, interesting thing about it. He was up in Ballachy, and it was time of the whole Lauren gun ring, all that kind of stuff, all UVF and stuff. So back just before the war. And he wouldn't join the UVF. He refused to join the UVF, and which was really weird because it was almost everybody went in. He said, "I'm not getting involved in it." And 2 years later, they also and you must join. Then, of course, the Ulster divisions went down from the UVF, and he again refused. I'm not going anywhere near that. And the Somme came in, and obviously there was all terrible casualties at the Somme, and he said, I knew the British weren't letting the UVF march for no reason, for nothing. That was his assumption that he knew they were going to be cannon fodder. But yes, he was he was. He had weird. I mean, he was. It's interesting because that up there in Ballachy is very cheek by jowl. So when there was a whole IRA campaign in the 20s. I mean, he was visited by the RA, and they came and said, "Well, we're not going to touch you're a respectable gent. We're not going to come near you," and stuff. So very, very, but it was kind of very weird.
Was very decent to him.
Very well, but unlike, well, probably that wouldn't happen today. But I remember when the second hunger strike. Who was the guy that died from Balahi?
Francis Hughes.
Francis Hughes. I remember my mum, because she'd come from there. She said, "Well, that's a very, very good family." Her attitude wasn't.
Which David Hume would tell you as well. The Orange Order is slightly different in the city, and in the rural areas there's far more. In the city there's overhangs of sectarianism and all that sort of stuff. But down the country, it's far more. Your Catholic neighbour will help you look after you.
But you've mentioned this the psalm there, and if ever there was an example where one person didn't look to the other and say, "What church did you go to? Or what's your opinion on politics?" The men from the 36th Ulster Division didn't go and ask Willie Redmond, "Willie, you John's brother, do you want us to help you in here?"
Yeah.
And those are there is more that brings us together than there is that divides us, I think. And yes, we have our history, we have our beliefs. But simple, basic things when you think about that, and I often, not often, but on occasion, when I thought it was appropriate, and wanting to galvanise the dressing room, there have been occasions, and I've talked about people coming together under, and that's how at Linfield, I'll say it again, I wasn't interested in anything, but were you a good enough footballer? Did you want to come and play for this club? Were you a winner? Did you believe you were good enough? I didn't care. End of story.
Well, getting back to the football and away from the politics. Right? And I know nothing about football. But, do you think there should be an All-Ireland football team?
I'm going to be.
Or is the two better?
No, here's what I'm. Here's the baseline for me. I can see the clamour for an All-Ireland football team. I'm going to be very practical and pragmatic. We have got 8 places over the 2 leagues for Europe. Yeah. 4 obviously Northern Ireland, 4 for League of Ireland. Given we've all of this inward investment over this last 18 months, sort of 2 years, where there's people have come in and putting their own money in. But the bottom line is that the monies that we get from Europe, not just from the teams that participate in Europe, but the solidarity money which now comes through to the league itself is absolutely massive. Yeah. So for me, All Ireland League, that would be like turkeys voting for Christmas. That's the absolute fact. Now, back in 2005, Linfield were the inaugural winners of the Santanta Cup, and we went down, played Shelbourne. We won 2-0 on a night when Shelbourne had 23 full-time pros. No one gave us a pup's chance. Fantastic night. I was then, and still am now, would be a big advocate for certainly cross-border competition and cross-border football. But the long and short of it is, why would we give up that amount of money? It just doesn't make any sense. Like, for example, give Tim's team, Cliftonville this year, in terms of where they were in the league. Yeah. It was a frustrating year, quite understandably given the number of players that left. Went to the Irish Cup. Most folk thought they were going to do what they did the previous year. Didn't happen, and Dungannon were victors. They then went to Glentoran and were absolutely brilliant, coming off the back of a gut-wrenching defeat in the Irish. Then they went down to Coleraine, who were on a real roll. Now, from that situation, the bottom line I'm trying to say, and we've got the new investment and the Canadians coming in. I'm not sure all the details in that. But Cliftonville's coffers are going to be so much better off because they're in Europe this year. Yeah. Now, you go to an All-Ireland League, they wouldn't have been anywhere near it.
Plus, there are a lot of teams like Dungannon or whatever. They want to travel to Cork or whatever.
No.
There are all sorts of financial issues as well.
Yeah, there's the practicalities. Full-time suits some clubs. It doesn't suit everybody. An All-Ireland League would suit some clubs. It wouldn't suit everybody. For me, it's the practicalities and the pragmatism of the monies that's currently available. So certainly All-Ireland competition, absolutely. But just for the simple fact of the finances, I wouldn't be touching it.
The reason I was asking is we found a clip when we were doing Pop Goes Northern Ireland, Geordie Best, 1979.
Yeah.
Calling for an All-Ireland team. And he definitely looks sober. Like.
This is the crazy thing, but because there was the talk about them and how we could be stronger together, and I can see the argument, but I keep going back. It's for me, it's about the practicalities of modern day football, and I've had that opinion since a way back. And if they were to suddenly give a League of Ireland 8 European places, then fine, but can you ever see that happening?
No.
Not a chance in the world.
Can I bring you back to one match in particular? Your Ballymena manager,
Yeah.
the County Antrim Shield. You're beating us 1-0, beating Cliftonville 1-0 up until the 90-something minute when we scored 2 goals that we didn't deserve because we were awful the entire time, and we beat you 2-1. And you did that match make you doubt your faith in God? Because you go, my goodness, because you were gutted. I remember you could not believe that.
Tim, I've got 2 experiences.
And by the way, I was ecstatic in the stand. And
I have that experience, and park that for I'm going to throw another one in, and that was Crusaders.
Yes, I remember that. Well, I did.
Okay, when they equalised in the last minute of injury time, and then they scored in the last minute of extra time. All I'm going to say is that Raymond Crangle, who I think was doing the game when we played Cliftonville,
the manager.
I bantered the life out of him. Raymond is an excellent referee. I'm delighted that he's continuing on in terms of his mentoring. I always, respected Raymond because what you saw was what you got. I did question that, the amount of time, 7 minutes, where on earth did it come from? Where did it come from, Raymond? And Here's how I look at it. That the bottom line was, yes, we could have, we should have, but we didn't. Why? Because see the 2 goals, we didn't defend them, and it's as matter of fact as that. Would I say, Lord, you've been so cruel, and I'm saying with all the reverence, that was definitely cruel.
Yeah,
that was cruel.
But football is like that.
But then to be really, really cruel, when we being Ballymena United, and I so much wanted to win, that trophy for Chairman John Taggart, Don Sterling, was with us at then. Incredible people, and just for the support, they were so good. And to have gone into a game where no one gives us a pup's chance, not a pup's chance, and we did tremendously well. And again, and to this day, probably not so much with Raymond in that game, but then I'm not going to even mention the referee's name, but I think there was certainly time that was played, which I don't know where on earth it came from. And again, I sort of think, God, why are you testing me like this? But listen, that's what it is. That's a game of football. I've been blessed, both at Ballymena and at Linfield.
How many trophies have you won in total?
Linfield was 31.
31?
31.
Wow.
We did 6 doubles in 7 years. We did a clean sweep in 2005, 2006. Ballymena, we got to Europe twice. Second, we won the League Cup. We won a European playoff. So all in all, sort of 32 stroke maybe 33 if you count the European playoff. So that's
not bad record.
Tim, the reality is, and you'll know it as well, when you are out, as a group, you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with. You are only as funny as you are to each other. That's the long and short of it. It's exactly the same in football. I was blessed with a wonderful, wonderful man, Brian McLaughlin, who worked along with me, as well as many others, but particularly during the time at Linfield. We had so many outstanding footballers, tremendous players, and God truly blessed us during that time. But not a bad return.
No, not a bad return at all. I want to talk very briefly about an ex-Clifton, Tommy Breslin, who was an absolute gentleman and a lovely, lovely man. The respect he got when he died and passed away. But he was a fairly quiet manager, and he had Peter Murray Minto, who was the way they worked was Tommy was quite quiet and tactical, and then when they weren't playing Minto, give them the boot up the backside that they needed. Are you a boot up the backside hair dryer man, or are you calm and quiet? And are you? What do you like in the dressing
Depends
room?
what the occasion lends itself to. Let me not just brush very quickly over Thomas Breslin. What a wonderful,
gentleman,
incredible, just a lovely, decent man. I remember the first league that he won. and congratulating him. And
We beat Linfield 20th
yes,
for the last game of the season.
we get chin 3-0. Was it Georgie McMullen scored the
penalty,
pen? Yeah. So, but what a lovely man, and he was that gracious. He was that humble, and an incredible man. Just a phenomenal man, and taken far too soon. But as I say, Thomas had his own way. I had maybe a variety of ways.
Right.
Back when I first started out, it probably was common practice to use the old hairdryer. So if someone wasn't playing the way they should be playing, then they got a rocket, and I mean an absolute rocket, and that was fine. And then as time, as the game moves on and players change and personalities change, then you realise you've got to maybe change a little bit. Yeah. So then you become persuasive in that you tell players how good they are for 5 minutes, that they're excellent in the air, they're tremendous passers of the ball, superb tacklers. But why are you not doing it today? It's one of those ones where you build them up for this period, and rather than going and falling out with you and getting all grumpy and humpy, they actually, if you've got the build up right, then they will agree with you that they're not doing as well as their talent deserves to be shown, and so there's a variety of ways,
I interviewed Brenton Rodgers once for a thing for the hospice. He did a lot of work with the hospice, and I interviewed him and he said it has changed over his career that you're not allowed to shout at footballers. They're very delicate, even though they're multi-millionaires and all of that, and you have to put your arm around them and be a bit of a social worker and go, you're wonderful. And if you shout at them, they go and they get their agent and they'll go, yeah, the manager shouted at me. The manager shouted at me.
It's different times. Again, we go back to Roy Coyle, who was the most significant manager, I suppose, in terms of longevity.
Yeah.
And if I came in at half time and hadn't been doing particularly well, and he roasted me, then that just got my hackles up, and I sort of thought, right, I'll show you.
Yeah.
I'll show you. And went to give it the non-verbals, just to look. I'll show you. That's all he wanted. And when you come down the tunnel, into the change room at the end of the game, knowing that you had done particularly well, then you're all you're childlike. You're looking across, almost hoping that you'll get a well done. The most you ever got was a nod. That was the height of it, But as far as he was concerned, job was done. But that was my mindset. Yeah. I'm going to just show you, and that was just how you reacted, and that was very much there wasn't too much. There wasn't too many times I remember arms being put around people, and
There was a producer in the BBC famous for going down to the actors when she wasn't happy with what was going on, how they were doing it. She should just shout at them, "Act better, everyone! Act better, everyone!"
No.
You wouldn't do that.
I got the whole walk out of it. Oh
God. So why do you call Joe Gormley Joseph Gormley? And Billy Joe Burns.
Long story. Came from Anthony Gorman, and I remember Tony Gorman, wonderful individual, one of the greatest footballers. Tony's from Letterkenny. He had a right foot to die for. He was just a superb footballer. And I remember having this conversation with my mother, and it was totally unrelated, but just about giving people their full titles. Yeah. And I would have been known as Big Davy or D or whatever else, and mother sort of would have, make sure they give you your full title, David. Fair enough. But I was always used to Davy, whatever. But so this sort of stuck somewhere. Yeah. And one day, it's described in an interview, talked about how well Anthony had done. What a tremendous free kick, absolutely outstanding. And I think it was his grandmother who had made the remark and said, "Wasn't it lovely for you to be called by your full name?" And I thought, well, see if that makes sense. Yeah. Now, some people sort of think that that's only there for a little
an affectation.
Possibly. No. But it genuinely came from a grandmother who loved to hear her grandson be given his full title. As I remember, I think it was almost sure it was Anthony's. Well, not his grandmother, it was his mum, but that mum I think it was his grandmother. And I thought, that resonated with me. I thought, see if that has that impact. Yeah. And so from there, now you get caught out, in some ways because there's Chris Lindsay. Mm-hmm. Chris is KRIS.
Yeah.
He's not Christopher. He's not Christopher. You've Robbie McDade. Who's they feel like Robbie's Robbie. Yeah, Robbie's not Robert. So you've got to be clear and make sure their titles are right. But
My
Joseph
mother would agree with you. I'm Timothy McGarry. Timothy. You're talking about Timothy.
But you know that was just a trait that came in, but it came genuinely from thinking, well, that resonated with a family member. Why not do that?
You're right. So football in the 80s. Do you think is it different or is it better now? Football, is the style, are footballers better now when they play than they were in the 80s? Is it more skilled?
I think probably the one thing is it's certainly more professional. There would be an argument all day long as to the various eras, of teams, and I know when I played for Linfield, they would have said that we weren't as good as previous teams, and they would have rhymed off names. I think the one significant difference is that the game has become much more professional in terms of expectations of players, about their eating, about their sleep pattern, their behaviour, their lifestyle. There's so many of those things that have changed. Is it better? I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. I look at the gates, and when I think back in the days and and the massive gates that there would have been in terms of the big games, like Linfield Cliftonville was massive play, and Linfield Glentoran was huge, absolutely huge. And the numbers of people would have come along. So the game has progressed. Sports science, everyone has an analyst. Everyone's running around with a GPS tracker. Everyone's talking about the number of hard runs and hard sprints.
Yeah.
They're all talking about body fat, which thankfully, it didn't happen, in my day. So there's been a sports science, has come into it, but an analysis is a big thing, and how they do their analysis. But it comes, for me, it's there are some basics, and are you good enough, and how do you apply yourself, and do you want to be a winner, and do you want to succeed, and do you want to be the best that you can be at whether a manager, player, coach, or whatever. There's some very simple things. So it has changed. As I say, I'm not going to say it's better, but it certainly has changed, and it has become more professionalised, if there's such a word.
Yeah, and there's a lot of players going from here, getting across the water now, which is
you think of when you think of Cliftonville.
Yeah,
look at Ronan.
We lost half our team.
You lost half of them who went to pastures. But the star of the show last year, and was it Ronan? I always get the boys mixed up.
Rory's still here.
Rory will go bananas. I remember doing a thing with him. So Ronan was outstanding. And I watched the game recently, where he was playing against Livingstone for Ross County, and he was excellent. Yeah. He was absolutely superb. You could Trey Hume, who is
Premier League now.
Phenomenal. So there's a whole influx of our whole group of young people who are going across and doing phenomenally well. You just look at the Northern Ireland team. My goodness gracious me. We're not having to depend on grannies and grandas anymore. Yeah. There's an awful lot of up-and-coming young talent who have come through the Irish League, might I add, as well. There was Stuart Dallas recently did a podcast for the Beltel, and when you think of where he come from, Coke, and his journey through.
Great fella.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm a Leeds fan. He got me tickets for Leeds a few times, Stuart. Lovely guy.
I always wondered, Timothy, why my brother Billy really liked and warmed you, because he is a Leeds United fanatic. Yes, he is.
Oh, very wise.
The Reverend William Jeffrey, who, Church of Ireland rector up in Lisbon and Coolbuck. But I always wondered why. But that must have been some 7 cents or 8 cents. Because he's a Leeds fanatic. Back to the day when you had those skillful players like Billy Bremner, Norman, bite your legs, Jack Charlton, Johnny Giles, smile in your face. I'll take your kneecap out in a minute. What a team they were, to be fair.
Yeah, and Stuart, lovely guy, and then
tremendous.
Terrible the injury he had.
The injury which he had is absolutely heartbreaking, and yet he's so philosophical about it, and there's no bitterness. There's actually a thankfulness, that he had the career that he had, and he will certainly have a career in football going forward. But again, a tremendous example of the wholesome nature that is Irish League football.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I love it. I love Irish League football. I know we.
No, really?
Yeah, no. A lot of people kind of put it down and stuff like that. And what depresses me if you go to the airport on a Friday or Saturday, you see
It's an
hundreds of
acquired
people
taste,
going to
Tim.
see Man United and
Yeah.
Leeds. But local football, you know,
It's an
15 quid.
it's an acquired taste,
Yeah.
you know. Okay, so and there will be those who look down their noses at it, and whatever.
Yeah.
Else. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. For me, it's proper.
Yeah.
It's absolutely proper,
Yeah.
proper. And again, I go back to where I started. You know, during the darkest days that we had in Northern Ireland, football brought people together, and you could list the friendships and the relationships that knew nothing about religion, knew nothing about political perspective or point of view. It was football that brought folk together.
If you hadn't been a footballer with other sport, do you think?
Well, now there's a question. Actually, I went to Sullivan and played rugby, and I started and I ended up being a number 8, and loved playing rugby. And in fact, it came to a bit of a decision maker about whether I would continue with rugby or concentrate on football. And quite simply, back in the day, obviously rugby was amateur. And my father says you'll not learn anything out of that, so you're sticking with the football.
You could have played rugby for Ireland.
I don't know about Ireland, but certainly Joe McKinney, who was my rugby master, felt that I was talented enough, and without bigging myself up, I certainly think I could have played for Ulster, and I would have probably given Ireland a crack.
Wow. Oh,
Tough
well.
sport.
Of course, it's a mad sport, you know. But it was one I thoroughly enjoyed, you know, back playing, you know, back in.
So would you go and watch Ulster? Would you watch?
No, I don't get the opportunity because it's of other commitments. Tim, that's a long and short of it. But I would.
Sorry, are you still working as a social worker? Or are you still
No, I retired.
Yeah,
I retired.
And you retired from management? Or you...
Well, football. I'll give you the two bits. I finished as a senior social worker in the 31st of March 2022.
Right.
I joined the Northern Trust on the 1st of April 1994. And the OCD in me, you know, that was 28 years. I was born on the 20th of October, so that was my date to finish. So that was it, which was a blessing in so many ways, because people say, "What will you do with your time now?" And I remember flippantly saying, well, I'll have more time for my mum and dad and what have you. And ironically, that I was given great time with my father right up until his passing at the beginning of the year, 3rd of January. Big Ken went to his heavenly home. But still,
was he, David?
He was in his 90th year.
Say, well,
oh, he was incredible man. My mother, Isabel, is Isabel Mary. Right. Wonderful.
She's still with us?
She is still there.
Oh, brilliant. What age is she?
My mum, her birthday was very recent, and I'm not going to say what
all
she
right,
is.
Okay.
Because she doesn't do birthday cards.
Okay,
all I will say was
she's a mature lady.
I am 62. If she tells me to jump, I say how high.
Right.
And she is the boss woman, a wonderful, beautiful, incredible lady. She really is something else. So, you know, God put that time aside for me in terms of mum and dad. In terms of the football, we finished with Ballymena 2023. It was the right time for them. My contract ran actually until 2025, but the chairman, Mr. Taggart, had stood down. Don Sterling had sadly passed away, vice chair. And we came to the end of the season, was actually when we played Crusaders again, ironically, in the Irish Cup. This time they gave us a thumping after we did so well to get there after beating Lauren in the semi-final. But it was the right time, you know, for us for that to come to an end. As it was the right time when I stepped down from Linfield. But then, within a month, my dear partner and Rose was diagnosed with breast cancer. Now, she has been an absolute warrior and been through the surgery, through the treatment, is doing tremendously well. Again, thank God. But have retired from sort of the formalities of social work and of football. Still write for the Belfast Telegraph. We have our own podcast.
Doing a bit of commentary as well.
A bit of commentary for the BBC are very kind,
yes.
And sometimes radio or the live stream games or the games that are in BBC Two. So I'm still as actively involved as I can be, and I can be as busy as I want to be. But in terms of that formal positions, they're no longer there.
Right.
But that is simply opened up an opportunity for me to do things, as I say, primarily with my family.
Right. Well, that's lovely. You're a lucky man.
I'm very blessed, Tim. Very, very, very blessed.
Well, it's interesting. You always say that you're blessed and God guides everything you think.
Without any shadow of a doubt, for me, it's not that life is a bed of roses. It's not that you're favoured in any way. But even today, being here and being invited along to participate in this wasn't a coincidence. Like whoever thought I would be in this, and I'm being honestly so serious. A program which I've watched way back. I remember Dan Gordon. Dan went to Sullivan. So these guys have been around in my psyche for I don't know how for how long. I remember the gentleman who used to wear the Linfield jersey, the Linfield supporter. Way back then.
Derek.
Yes, Derek. So I have been. You've been a part of my life for a long time. I never thought I would be doing a podcast like this, but again, it's not a coincidence.
Well, thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast, and I wish you very, very well. You're definitely not going back to management. If an opportunity come up and somebody said, David Jeffries, are you available if somebody...
Rose always would say never. So that's one bit. The second thing, but the first thing is that if God has that in his plan for my life, and
how will he let you know?
Oh, he will let me know, and he will let me know in his own way.
Right.
So we're certainly not saying never,
right.
But I'm not actively looking at it. I'm not hungry going to games thinking where might there be opportunity.
Right.
I'm 62 now. We'd say 17 a bit years at Linfield. Longest serving manager there at Ballymena, 7 years. Sort of long time in the greasy pool.
Yeah.
So it would need to be something pretty.
Man United. Surely.
Not a chance in the world. And
I couldn't come on. You did a very good job there.
It would be a marvellous. My goodness gracious me, because Manchester United were my team simply because of George Best.
Right, of course.
Love George. I remember being blessed on two occasions. Pat Jennings' testimonial. And George was across, and there was a number of players who didn't arrive, so they recruited some folk from the Irish League to play in that game. And I will never forget a dummy that he gave that night. It was the lad Webb who was at Manchester United who came across, and George went one way, and you would have swore the whole of the North Stand went the other way. Honestly, such was his ability. Yeah. And then he played in another game. I think it was Peter Doran's testimonial, who was at a Linfield great, and George was there. And I remember just falling about this hero. What a kind and lovely gentleman. So I always had that affinity with Manchester United, not just because I was there as a player, but because of George. But I think to take on that job, my goodness gracious me, I think I need Sir Alex back.
Think of the money. No, the money wouldn't pay for that job.
I think it would.
Well, either Manchester United or Cliftonville, maybe. We've been managing Cliftonville. Not that there's a vacancy, by the way. Jim Magilton's doing a fantastic job.
Jim has done a brilliant job, and I've said this on a number of occasions. I'm delighted. Because there were those there who maybe weren't overly favourable to Jim in the first place.
Nonsense abuse before he even started.
But when you think about what he did as a player and as a manager, what he has done, along with obviously Jared Little, what they've done is absolutely remarkable.
Yeah.
He has done superbly well.
He was on this podcast. He was very good too.
I've got to say,
he was very good.
I thought I would use the word exceptional because I actually watched that episode.
Did you?
I did indeed. In preparation, I watched that, so I sort of half knew what I was going to get. Probably wasn't going to get the love, care, and attention that you threw upon him, Ken, but then again,
well, I was going to build a statue to him on May the 4th last year, but But what I love about football is we lost to Dungannon, as you know, in the final, and but then I like Dungannon, and I love going down to Dungannon, and you couldn't argue that we should have won it, and you kind of went, you know what, I was glad for.
Well, the facts of the matter with this, the previous year when Cliftonville played Linfield, first half, Cliftonville were like a boxer in the ropes, and if Linfield had scored another goal, it was good night Irene. Cliftonville came out second half were absolutely brilliant. They were superb, and and thoroughly deserved. And you simply compare that performance last year to the performance this year. It wasn't that their attitude was poor. It's not that they didn't give of their best. They just didn't reach the height of the previous years. And when you've got Bigger Arma clearing off the line and Big Decky Dunn making the saves that he did, sometimes it's not written, you know. And I know that in the day that he's won the County Under Shield in the 7th minute, you know. Not that I'm better in thinking back in that, you know. But sometimes, you know, things just, you know, aren't. And that was it.
That's the joy of football.
But the joy is, look at the response. Like, you must have been on a super duper high after the Coleraine game.
The Coleraine game, well,
you know,
brilliant response.
Amazing response. And that ultimately, you've got to give great credit to the players, but you've got to give great credit to the manager who galvanised, brought them together, and particularly, you know, in a year which was so difficult for both Linfield and for Cliftonville with the loss of Michael. And all of those difficulties, you know, and when you think of Paul Butler at Linfield and also Andy Kerr, log serving team attendance. So there was lots of emotion around for for clubs in Cliftonville situation, you know, particularly so. And but Jim Mitchell, what a job.
Listen, David, we could talk for ages, but we're running out of time. But listen, thank you for your passion for local football. Genuinely, I share not quite as much as you, but I do share the passion for local football. And you know, I'm a massive Cliftonville fan, but I do love the local game, and you've done an awful lot for it. And I hated you for many years.
biggest compliment you can pay me, Tim. Can I just say thank you very much indeed?
No.
Never would I've ever dreamed of being such illustrious company, and I mean that genuine and sincerely. I'm not trying to be a funny ass, not in any way, shape or form. This has been wonderful. Thank you so very, very much indeed. And as I say, it has been a wonderful experience. And thanks very much indeed, Tim. I know you're going to give me a couple of complimentary tickets for the Grand Opera House at Christmas. You know,
carried a thing too far. You went over the edge. And
take care and God bless you. Thank you so very much indeed.
Thank you very much. That's it from this particular episode of the Give My Head podcast. Don't forget, tickets are available for our live show and again live show on the 12th of October, Give My Head podcast. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, absolute pleasure. David Jeffrey, thank you very much. Thank you, David Jeffrey.
Thank you.